Okay, so as for the fact of the case, the plaintiff was the Mr. Ananthagopi Alaguganesan, an Indian national, arrived in Malaysia on March 7, 2020, holding a social visit pass valid until August 13, 2020. He became stranded due to COVID-19 lockdowns, but on March 19, the Director General of Immigration issued a letter allowing foreigners to remain in Malaysia despite expiring passes. On October 10, 2020, while the plaintiff at the friend's house in Port Dickson, the plaintiff was arrested by Inspector Jainton and other officers allegedly for the misappropriation of a statue from a local temple. So he testified that he was dragged from the house without being asked for identification or being informed of the arrest or reason until he was already in a car. So his friend, Mr. Mahendran, corroborated his account, noting that the police did not identify themselves as police and the plaintiff's passport was within reach. In contrast, Inspector Jainton claimed that he introduced himself as a police officer, showed his identification to Mr. Mahendran, and requested Mr. Alaguganesan's identification upon his arrival. Jainton asserted that Mr. Alaguganesan shot only a photograph of his passport on his phone and admitted his visa had expired, warranting the arrest. Inspector Warren Ganesan, another officer present, could not confirm whether the Jainton introduced himself or requested identification, and he later acknowledged discrepancies in his testimony. The situation presents conflicting narratives regarding the legality and circumstances of the arrest.
So the issue is whether the arrest and detention of Ananthagopi Alaguganesan were lawful under the Immigration Act and the Federal Constitution. So there's two issues that we have to address in this case, which is the first one, validity of the arrest. The plaintiff agreed that his arrest on October 10, 2020 was unlawful because he was not informed of the ground for his arrest at the time it occurred. So according to Article 5, Clause 3 of the Federal Constitution, an arrested person must be informed of the reason for their arrest as soon as possible. So the plaintiff contended that he was only informed for the reason of his arrest after he been taken into a police vehicle, which constituted a violation of his right. Also, the police officer, Inspector Jainton, justified that the plaintiff begged to produce valid identification when requested. However, the plaintiff and the witness testified that the police did not ask for his identification before arresting him, which raised a question about the police conduct and the validity of the arrest. So, the second issue that we have to address is plaintiff expired passes as ground to arrest. So, the case also examined under application of the Immigration Act, particularly regarding the plaintiff's status in Malaysia. The plaintiff had entered Malaysia on a social visit pass that expired state, but he argued that he was lawfully allowed to remain in the country due to the circular issued by the Department of Immigration on March 19, 2020, which permitted foreigners stranded due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So, the court had to determine whether the police had reasonable ground to believe that the plaintiff had committed an immigration offences, given the circumstances of his detention.
So, as for the judgment in the case of Ananthagopi Alaguganesan, the Malaysian High Court partially agreed with him. The Malaysian government and Inspector Jainton were ordered by the court to pay him RM255,009 in total, which divided into 180,000 for the 12 days he was illegally imprisoned, RM15,000 each day, RM45,000 as a punishment for misconduct, and 30,000 for legal fees. The allegation made against the other accused were rejected.
For the rationale, the court's ruling was founded on a number of important factors. First, Inspector Jainton's failure to follow the correct procedures, notifying Ananthagopi of the reason for his arrest and preventing him from obtaining his passport from a nearby location, made the arrest illegal. Above all, the inspector disregarded a COVID-19 immigration circular that permitted foreigners to remain in Malaysia throughout the lockdown because Inspector Jainton was working for the government at the time of the arrest. The court determined that the government was liable. The court was especially sketching of the inspector persistent in pushing for charges even after establishing the validity of Ananthagopi paperwork on October 20. implying either lack of knowledge about the law or potential malice. The court, however, limited the responsibility period to 22 October 2020 when formal charges were filed, as any further detention was protected by a court order.
Okay, so in this case, it involves an Indian national man who was arrested on October 10, 2020 following allegations related to a deity statue. So what makes this case noteworthy is the circumstances surrounding the arrest itself and its legal implications. For my commentary, I want to highlight three key aspects, which is the first one regarding the arrest itself. The court found serious procedural irregularities where the police failed to properly identify themselves and prevented the individual from retrieving his documents. A witness testimony supported these claims, leading the court to question the credibility of the police account. Second, the legal status of the individual was actually valid. While his social visit pass had expired in August 2020, he was legally permitted to stay in the country under Special Immigration Department provision during the Movement Control Order period. Finally, the court's ruling was decisive. The court rules that the detention was deemed legally unjustified and the police actions were ruled unlawful. While sexual assault allegations were raised, they were dismissed due to insufficient evidence. The significance of this ruling extends beyond this single case. It serves a crucial reminder about the importance of maintaining proper police procedures even during exceptional circumstances like a pandemic. The case effectively demonstrates how courts play a vital role in protecting individual rights and the need for ongoing reform in law enforcement practices.
To conclude this case, the arrest and detention of Ananthagopi were determined to be unlawful. The police failed to follow the proper procedure and they did not inform Ananthagopi the reason for his arrest. Nor did they request for the identification document. Additionally, a COVID-19 circular exempting individuals with expired visa were ignored in this case. The police testimony lacked credibility and key witnesses were notably absent during the proceeding. As a result, the High Court awarded 255,000 ringgit in damages. This covered the compensation for wrongful detention, misconduct and legal costs. This is a decision to underscore the importance of adherence to proper procedure and the protection of individual rights. That's all from me.